Hi everyone and welcome. Today we'll be doing visual literacy. Visual literacy refers to the idea that images and pictures can be read just like words in a book, in an article, or on a page. Here we have to interpret the meaning of the information that's being given to us through a picture. Let's look at some examples. When we view graphs, when we look at pictures, the latest studies show that video games can optimize your visual literacy as well, and comic books or comic strips. Usually, when looking at graphs and charts, they are accompanied with a heading, subheadings, categories, names for axes and variables. When we look at the graph only and not look at the titles and headings like I've mentioned before, we can still gather a lot of information. Let me show you. With this graph here, even though there is no heading and the axes are not named, we can still see that the information here is on a rise. With the next graph, again, there is no heading and the axes are not named, but we can still see that two things are being compared to one another. With the pie chart, it's easy to see that we are taking information from one thing or one aspect and subcategorizing them into different parts. Those different parts are being compared to or put in relation to one another in this pie graph. When we look at photos or think of photos, usually what comes to mind is all those social media applications that we love to use. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, etc. But you haven't really thought about what a photo can show you or the information it can give you. In a photo, we can see the setting, usually in the background where the picture is taken, roughly the time of day, if it's day or night time, or the time of the year, if it's winter or summer, and the relationship between people, if they are friends, if they are acquaintances, or if they don't know each other. Let's look at these three pictures. From the left to the right, we can see at the first one that it's nighttime in Paris and two friends are looking at the Eiffel Tower. The second one is quite obvious, also nighttime, but this time it's winter time as well in New York City. And the last one looks quite nice. It's a beach setting during the day with a bunch of friends. Video games. You'll be quite happy to know that playing video games can optimize your visual literacy. Even though you don't pay attention to it, you take hints, clues, and cues from various visual stimuli to help you progress in the game. Where to go, what to do, and what to avoid. Let me show you. In this game, you will see that all around the rim of the screen there is a slight red hue, showing you that your character is starting to die. In the next one, you can see that there's a lot of smoke coming from the wheels of this airplane, showing you that your brakes are working overtime. From these little squiggles, you can imagine your character being underwater. And then lastly, but the most important of any video game, is your health bar. You don't need any instructions or wording to know that this indicates how long your character can live. Cartoons and cartoon strips. A cartoon is a drawn, humorous picture that's used to express ideas or draw attention to situations. In this PowerPoint presentation, we'll be looking at three factors of comic strips or cartoons. First, we'll be looking at characters. Second, we'll be looking at the background and the setting. And lastly, we'll be looking at the actions of these characters. When we look at characters, we have to pay attention to how the artist drew this character. We have to identify any facial expression and look at the relationship between one character to another. When we look at the background and the setting, we have to study it carefully to see where this is taking place and the actions. Even though on a piece of paper you can't have moving objects, some lines, kinetic lines, can show movement on a page. Let's look at characters and setting. The physical build of the character. Cartoonists usually make use of many stereotypes in order to make their characters recognizable. Facial expressions. Facial expressions are the most direct way the cartoonist can show the reader what the characters are feeling or experiencing at that moment. Body language is also a way for the artist to show the emotions of a character, and the body language goes hand in hand with facial expressions. When we want to see what the relationship between characters are, we have to be mindful of the body language and the facial expressions between two characters. Let's move on to setting. The setting immediately lets the reader know whether the cartoon is fictional or factual. It also lets the reader know when and where the specific cartoon is taking place by using iconic and historic landmarks. Obviously, it's impossible to create a moving picture on a piece of paper, so cartoonists make use of kinetic stripes to show movement. These are 6 types of kinetic stripes that cartoonists usually use to indicate movement. Let's go through the first one. Briffets. Briffets are clouds of dust trailing behind a fast-moving object, and it looks something like this. Squeens are bubbles above the head of a character if the character is drunk. Imata are stripes that surround a person's head when they are surprised. Blurgets are short stripes used to indicate slight movement. Heights are horizontal or vertical lines showing movement. And then plumes are drops of sweat on the face of a character showing stress or hard work. Let's look at this comic strip in action. First, let us count the frames. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let me introduce you now to the 3 main characters. This is Cocophonics, Asterix, and Obelix. Let's move on to kinetic stripes. Let's see what these characters are up to. The lines over Obelix's hand show that he is waving Cocophonics down to stop him. Obelix just came from another place since the dust is still trailing behind him. After hearing that they don't like his music, Cocophonics is very upset and shocked. We can see this through the lines above his head and the swift motion of his shoulder and his cape turning around. The plumes on Asterix and Obelix's face indicate that they are enjoying their laughter, while Cocophonics is moving away in distress. I hope you enjoyed this lesson as much as I did. I'm looking forward to seeing your own cartoons in your book. Please make sure that you look up the worksheet I've attached for this week and complete it in your book. Thank you and stay safe.